This camera is complete Hello everybody, this is meteorologist Andrew Pinero with another action review, again with the Canon EOS R. This one, almost a year since the last video. I think it was January of last year that I filmed or published that last video. But it is now a year since I've had this camera. And let me tell you, I have really enjoyed this. So for a look back at the last video, some of the highlights with this, I went through at that time the Sigma 24mm art lens that was f1.4. That's what I got with the Canon. So I got the EOS R body only. And then I bought the Sigma with it, with that adapter. Then, later down the road, I picked up the, where did it go? This guy. This is the Tamron 70-200 EF with the EF to RF adapter on there. And this is a great lens. It's heavy. It's like 3 pounds itself just for the lens. But it's really great. This I shot at Animal Kingdom. Very sharp. Then a little bit after that, I forgot which order I did this. I think I returned, the Sigma for this. The RF, Canon's RF 35mm f1.8. Nice little compact lens. And when that's sitting on the tripod, when that's sitting with the camera, it really feels like a nice size for a mirrorless camera. It feels a bit more of that mirrorless size, which is a little bit more compact. And then, I believe this one was the newest lens that I got, which is actually the kit lens. So if I bought the Canon with the kit lens, it would have been this lens, which is in Canon's L series, which is the highest end, that red ring. So that designates it as the higher end lens from Canon, and it's a pretty good lens. This is a 24-105 f4. So it's constant at f4. It's not a variable aperture. But it's a really great lens, a nice run and gun lens. So that I would use if I'm out on a shoot, say for like the Bear Mountain car cruise, which I've done before. Also, I've used this with a couple like the Disney trip. I used the 24-105 mostly on that because of it. F4 is still a really good aperture setting for some pretty good shallow depth of field, but also the zoom range on there. It goes from a wide angle, the 24mm, to a 105, which is a zoom lens, which is almost 2 times. If you kind of think of it as around a 50 is kind of that regular, what our eyes see, so then about 100, so roughly 2 times of a zoom is what you're kind of getting with this lens. So those are my 3 lenses at the moment, and I have thoroughly enjoyed these. It's not truly that holy trinity, but it kind of encompasses a lot of the focal lengths that I want to use for photography and for videography. So let me switch back to this little Canon EOS R. So let's switch the cameras and we'll see how that looks again. Well, that looks quite different. And this is one of the nice things I like with this camera. Now I was just using the phone with the front-facing camera, so I was able to see my view. But this, the Canon EOS R, has this little viewfinder on the side. So I can adjust myself, make sure I'm using my proper rule of thirds in there. And that sets up the framing. Otherwise, a year ago, when I bought this Canon camera, I had a Sony A6300, which was a pretty good camera. And the one thing I did like better about that camera than this camera was the 4K. So when you do 4K on this, it does this little zoom in. It crops it in. And Sony's full frame cameras, they use full frame 4K. This one uses a cropped in 4K. It's a pixel for pixel size of the sensor in the camera. Versus the Sony, it used the full sensor. So essentially it was recording a 6K image, and in body it was downsampling to 4K, which does overall produce a slightly better looking image, but it overheated. The 6300 I had did overheat in a couple of my shoots. Not often, but it did happen. I have never once had this Canon overheat. And once I got past the first initial firmware of this, which had a few like weird issues where I lost control of the camera, after that initial release of the firmware, I've never had another issue. This has been a very reliable camera. A lot of people say that this Canon EOS R is not a pro camera. But what really is a pro camera? In my opinion, it's this. It's a camera that is, number one, reliable. No matter where you go. I do a lot of shoots outside. Here's one in the snow. Here's one just in a sunny day. Here's one in the rain. And all of these, this camera went perfectly through all of those different situations, which is, in my opinion, what makes a camera a pro camera. You can bring it anywhere you need to go as a professional, and it just doesn't fall apart, doesn't do anything bad. It just does what you need it to do. That's my opinion of a pro camera, and that is what this is. The only gripe is the SD card. Now, sure, forget about one SD card, two SD card, that's another discussion. But the fact of it using an SD card itself versus something like a CF Express or an XQD card or anything like that, the SD card is not the most reliable. Overall, the camera, very reliable. The SD card, maybe not so much, depending on the SD card. Some of them have a higher reliability than others, but still, that's really the only negative side of reliability with this. From my own personal experience, I have never once had an SD card fail on me. That's not to say it doesn't exist. I see professionals have that happen all the time, which is why the Sony, the a7 III, which was another really popular camera, shoots redundantly, 2 SD cards. So like right now, if something happens with this recording, between the time I'm able to get it out of the camera and into my computer, the footage is just gone. But that's not necessarily the camera itself. So we're judging just the camera. SD card aside, that is just one negative. But overall, it is super comfortable. The grip, that is what I find most appealing to this camera. Well, second most appealing. That little side flip, the vari-angle display, I think they call it, that really helps when I am shooting myself. I'm the camera person and I'm the on-camera talent. Having that is really helpful versus having to buy an external monitor or external monitor recorder. So that is where I really think of this as a pro camera. Are there pro cameras that have some better features? Yes. But this, to me, is a pro camera, and I have made money using this camera. Shooting, basically it was products for selling. Shooting products for selling is what I was doing, and it really worked well. And I did make some money off that. So this is where these types of cameras, the around $2,000 plus, even getting down like $1,000 camera plus, that's where you're starting to make an investment into this as a hobby versus $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 cameras as a career. I haven't done anything with this as a career. I've done this to make some money here and there, and it's enjoyable. I like it. And in terms of YouTube, for YouTube, this is really great. YouTube doesn't really, if you shoot in 4K and you upload to YouTube, it's not going to be the same quality 4K. And the 1080, which I am shooting on right now, that's the setting I have, is really good. It looks very smooth. This is essentially using the full frame of the sensor. So that is one of my favorite things with this, is overall just the reliability, the comfort. The 6300 I used wasn't the most comfortable. I tried the A7 III when my friends was selling it at the time I was considering buying this. I didn't find it the most comfortable. And the flip out, the vari-angle screen. Essentially, it's an attached monitor. And that is why I chose the EOS R as my main professional camera. In studio, with my green screen now, I am using this camera, and the quality jump is dramatic from just using the phone camera on the green screen. This is where I'm trying to produce the best quality content I can for you guys, and this camera really helps that. Otherwise, just in terms of shooting, the way the buttons are laid out, like with my hand when I'm shooting, everything's just right at my fingertips or in the rings. One of the benefits with this RF lens is you have this extra control ring, which you can change things. You can map certain things to it. I have aperture setting right on there, while I have ISO with this touch bar that's on the back, and then I have shutter right up here. So ISO, shutter, aperture, all right on my fingertips, quite literally. So this is where I really enjoy this camera. A year later, I still really enjoy this. If you want to see my initial review, it really hasn't changed too much. I'll put that link in the description for you guys. But overall, I really enjoyed this camera. I do recommend it. And one of my friends that does professional shooting, I did recommend this to him. He bought an EOS R. He borrowed one of my lenses. He actually borrowed this 24-105 once before his other lenses came in. And he enjoyed it. It works really well for him. So that's pretty much the end of this video. It's just a little recap video for a year later. Great camera. I do recommend it for anybody. If you're looking for a camera around that $2,000 price range, this is a good option. So this is meteorologist Andrew Pinero. Thank you for joining this action review. If you want to check out more content on the cameras, video gaming I have, game streaming, and my main thing, the weather. We do have some pretty cold weather ahead of us. Let's talk about that. Hit that subscribe button below and the little bell icon right next to that so you get notified whenever I upload a video or I do go live. So again, this is meteorologist Andrew Pinero. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I will see you all in the next video.